always do that wrong.
Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello, everybody. Bob Lusk, the Pond Boss, coming at you live on this Wednesday, February 5th, hanging out in Pecan Plantation at the hotel. They got a really nice small hotel here. Hello, Mark Overby. Good to see you. And not at our house. And we've got mixed emotions about that. We're happy about it, but we'd rather be sleeping there tonight. Hello, John Funk, Doug Cusick. Good to see you, buddy. But anyway, the contractors are painting the house. So we're going to be at a hotel for a few days. Now, Debbie's over here kind of hunkered down behind me, and there's girlfriend over here. She's having a good day. So I'm not quite sure everything I want to talk about today. I do want to talk about some things about fish. So we did a really interesting study here a couple of weeks ago, and I told you a little bit about it in last week's show when we were in South Louisiana with Ron Ardoin. Ron Ardoin. If he's watching, he's going to be happy about that. Hello, John Elmer. Thank you, man. I appreciate you taking time to watch this show. But there was really interesting stuff we found in that lake. So what we did was, there's Billy Bates. I see Billy Bates checking in. Yep. I got to do this. You guys know the drill. You're beating me to it. I'm so glad you did. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine. Click like or the little heart thing right down there. And share this to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss t-shirt. We'll have a drawing here pretty quick. I'm sure Leanne's in charge of that. She'll let me know when she does it, and then I'll announce it to everybody. But we appreciate you helping spread the word about Pond Boss. Drew Schmidt, good to see you, buddy. Let me make sure I'm not missing anybody here that I can see. If I see that you're on, I'll greet you. And I'm glad that you're taking time out of your Wednesday. I see Todd Austin, Mike Cottrell checking in, Palapena County, Texas. Billy Granholm from McLeod Aquatics in Elburn, Illinois. Good to see you, brother. Glad you joined up. Hello, Danny Mack. Taking time off the pond bank. I do want to talk about several things. There's Mark Overby. Good to see Mark Overby checking in with us. And I am going to talk about the fish, but I do think that we ought to talk about the weather and what the weather's done, because there's not too many of you watching this show that weren't impacted by the weather last week. So we had this polar vortex or Arctic, whatever the heck it was, here in Texas. It was in the 70s and 80s a few days before. This front blew through, had a little bit of precipitation with it, in the form of ice, typically some rain, ice, sleet, and then snow. And the temperature got down into the teens. In some areas of North Texas, it got down into single digits. And that was last Wednesday night, I think, or Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when we had those cold temperatures. And then Monday it was in the 50s where I was in Central Texas taking care of grandkids. And then today it's in the 70s, and tomorrow it's going to be in the 80s. What does that do to your pond? Well, let me tell you what it does to your pond. It sends the temperature on a wild swing, where when the air temperature was in the 80s, your pond temperature was probably in the mid 50s. And when that Arctic front came through, if you didn't have ice on your pond, which you guys in the north had that, but where we didn't have ice, the temperature would go from in the 50s, and it would plummet down into the mid to low 40s. So it would drop 10 to 12 degrees over that span of time, and that's getting ready to shoot back up. That's pretty stressful on fish. Fish don't like that. It weakens their immune systems. It causes them to move a little bit more than they do now. In northern states, northern tier part of the country where you guys had ice and that norther blew through, didn't make any difference to your fish because nothing changed under the ice. I've preached this before, but the more you know about the way water works, the better you can manage your pond. At 39 degrees, you take a gallon milk jug and fill it up with water, chill it to 39 degrees, and you weigh it, and then warm that water up. It's going to start spilling over the top of that gallon jug. Water warmer than 39 and water cooler than 39 expands. So what happens is with a pond, when you've got ice on top, the water at the bottom is going to be close to 40 degrees. So that's basically a thermal refuge for your fish. They don't like water 33 degrees. They don't like that. I don't care what fish it is. There's no freshwater fish that likes 32 degrees. 33 degrees compared to 40 degrees. That's a big difference. So that was a pretty big deal. Look at that. There's Christopher Aguilar. Got to break some boudin with him here a couple of weeks ago. That was really fun. So, but what also happens is like in parts of the South and somewhat in the Southeast, there's a drought going on. And so when ponds drop down 3-4 feet, like some I've seen recently, a lot of that vegetation that had rimmed the pond will freeze out. Now, unless it's got tubers or there's a good seed bank, a lot of times those plants won't come back nearly as strong. People actually use drawdown as a management tool, especially in parts of the country where we know it's going to get cold. So that's going to happen. Some of the plants are going to go dormant or even go away. Not that they won't come back. It's just that if you had a big thick mat of plants and the pond dropped 2 feet in the last 60 days, what this front did was take out a bunch of it. Now, it didn't really affect the population of the fish or the dynamics of fish, but it sure could affect their health. I've seen fish where the water temperature is warm, goes cold, comes warm, develop red sores disease, or get another, like catfish will get one called ick. And that's where the fish are pretty crowded. If you got a lot of fish, be on the lookout for that. So let's see here. Mike Dower, how many grass eating carp do you recommend for an acre pond? I'll tell you what I do with grass carp. I look at the types of vegetation. I want to be sure that grass carp are going to eat it because they have preferred vegetation. They have things they like. They have things they don't like. They'll eat the preferred vegetation first. And if you got vegetation that you like, that you might want to preserve, then I wouldn't stock any. They're also random. It's not that they're going to come control it around your dock first and then go up into the coves and get it. They're going to get it where they're the safest and least disturbed. Now, how many per acre is going to be based on how much vegetation you've got. So what I typically do is rather than go in, like in the state of Texas, they recommend 7 per acre on a heavily vegetated pond. Now that's vegetated acre. So rather than go apply for that, buy those 7 grass carp per acre, assess the situation and then decide the grass carp are the best for that. If you're trying to get rid of primrose or cattails or something, algae, they can't eat that stuff. So you got to know what's going on there. And I would do that. I would do that first. Now, I very rarely stock more than 3 per acre in any pond because it took years to get that bad. You don't want to unpickle that pickle in a short period of time. So if you've got too much aquatic plants, I'd rather look at a more holistic approach to it. Are there some good, safe herbicides that you can use to take out some of it while the grass carp do the mowing? I mean, if you buy a piece of land and the Johnson grass is 8 feet tall, you're not going to mow it on a riding lawnmower. You're going to bring a brush hog in and knock it down. Then when you get it down, then you'll maintain it. Well, grass carp are 0-turn mowers. That's how they work. So you want to get it controlled before you stock them. I start with 3 because you can always add a few more if they're not doing the job, but it's hard to get them out once you get them. And they're going to be 14, 13, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old before they age out and die. So there's Leah Gruns checking in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Justin Ludwig from Central Oklahoma. I'm going to be in Central Oklahoma tomorrow. I'm going to be around Allen tomorrow somewhere. Here we go. Click heart and share to your timeline. Aguilar says, hello, Drew Hay, checking in from Pennsylvania. I bet it's pretty chilly there. Justin Ludwig had 4 inches of ice develop on your ponds with the weather shift last week. I totally believe that. There's Kenny Sanderson checking in from Kansas. David Schneiderman, Easy Doc, one of our sponsors. Good to see David. Danny Mack, my pond's been doing that temperature swing. My aerator shuts off when the air temperature is less than 55. The fish go to the bottom when it gets cold with the aerator off. I must be conserving the warmth in the bottom. That's exactly right. Because in San Antonio, when you had that front come through, I can guarantee you your water temperature got down. If you didn't get ice, you were close to it, which means your water temperature went from the 50s, and you're in a small pond like what Danny Mack's got. The water temperature can go from the 50s down even into the 30s and do it just in a couple of days, especially if you're recirculating or aerating. So turning that aeration system off or having a timer on there where it turns off at 55 degrees is a great strategical move, because that way the upper 1.5 to 3 feet are going to be what expands and gets colder quicker and preserves that warmer water in the 40s down beneath it. And you know, when we had this hard winter storm last year that lasted over a week and the power went out and all that kind of political nonsense, I knew threadfin shad died all over the state of Texas. I was stunned to find out that there were lakes, even fairly shallow lakes, that they did not die. So what had to have happened was that front roared through so fast, chilled that water at the surface down, put ice on top of it, and preserved water temperatures warm enough down deep that the threadfin shad couldn't die. And that means the water temperature didn't get below 42 degrees. They die at 42 degrees. And I was really, really surprised at that. There's Mark Dyer listening in Nebraska. I love to find out where everybody's from. That's cool. We always have a nationwide audience. I think that's cool. Leah says, do you have a go-to seed mix recommendation for parts of our pond dam that didn't get topped with topsoil after construction? Pond is 1 year old. We're south of Tulsa. I tell you what my recommendation is going to be is get some topsoil on it, because the seed mix is not going to be nearly as relevant as having soil that the seeds can grow in. Now, this time of year, I'd be tempted south of Tulsa to use maybe a ryegrass or a fescue or a cold weather grass. Get that established and do that as soon as you can, so you're not going to be so affected by erosion as you would be if it's not vegetated. But if you can get somebody out there, I don't know how big your pond dam is, but if you've got some topsoil around there, man, I'd put a layer of topsoil on the top of the dam and on the backside slope, and then seed it with rye or seed it with fescue, or check with your local co-op or your county agent and see what they recommend there. Now, the seed mix that I would choose is going to be based on my other uses as well. I might want a wildlife mix. You know, I want to establish something with a ground cover that's going to hold the soil in place. The number one objective is to keep the soil from eroding. So that's the very first thing that you want to accomplish. The second thing is, how does that plant match up with the rest of your goals? You know, I was talking to a guy, at the end of the week last week, and he's building a pond in central Texas, and he's got an area where he likes to hunt, and the dam's right beside that area. He wants to use the backside slope of the dam for a food plot, and then the top of the dam for wildflowers, because he can see it from the house. You know, and so he's going to have a mix of things, but the primary thing is some kind of grass who has roots enough year-round to keep the dirt from leaving. So I'm going to recommend either rye or fescue, but I'm also going to recommend call your county agent there in Tulsa and tell them what they're wanting to do, or south of Tulsa if you're in Beggs or wherever you are. Check there with that county agent. Doug Cusick came out yesterday to the farm and the ice was melted off, but still had snow drifts. Snow is mostly gone now. Water temperature from 41 to 44 today. Air temperature hot, low 60s in Kansas. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So Danny Mac says the bottom temperature is still fluctuating, high 50s to mid 40s over a few days. Yeah, I totally get that. Look at that. There's Tim Stewart checking in from Florida. Mike McPherson from Indiana. Tim Stewart, man, hope the honeybee business is good. Tim's a really interesting character too. He came to the Institute of Higher Pondology, as did Danny Mac, and we spent some great time together. Gosh, that's already been over a year. I'm going to put together another one of those. Now, speaking of that, Chris Blood would want me to promote myself a little bit, and I'm kind of queasy doing that. But the Institute of Higher Pondology, we've got an online version of that where we've got, I think, 26 videos that take you through everything from how to design a pond. We're working on a video now, Chico and I, on pond construction that we're going to add to the Institute here in, I don't know, probably another month or 6 weeks. We'll have that video done, and it will really hammer home all the aspects of how to build a pond. But there's other things, fisheries management, some aquatic plant stuff. We got it in 6 different modules. They're all priced, each module is priced on its own merit. Or if you want to buy the whole kit and caboodle, do people still say that? I guess they do, I did. And so you can buy the whole thing for $495. And My premise on this is I want to recover the cost, make a few dollars, a little mailbox money, but I want to save you the dumb tax. That's the deal. If you can take home just 4 or 5 little nuggets out of any of those videos that will save you from making a mistake or paying for something you shouldn't, then it's worth it. It's worth it for that. So if anybody's getting ready to get pretty serious about pond management, man, I sure look at that. Other resources you've got pondboss.com. You've got at pondboss.com, we've got some free videos, free articles. We've also got all these videos here archived, linked from the Pond Boss website to YouTube, where Leanne downloads these a few days after we do them. And then, so all those are saved and you can access all that stuff. So let me see what else is going on here. Justin Ludwig, are you going to be around Ada, Oklahoma tomorrow? That's about 2 hours away. You know what? I think that I'll be going pretty close to Ada. Matter of fact, I know I am, because I got to go to Allen, and I will leave Granbury in the morning and then stop off in Gordonville at my office for an hour and a half or so, and I got to be in Gerty, Oklahoma. Gerty, Gerty, Oklahoma, at 1 o'clock tomorrow to look at a brand new lake and see what's going on. So, Justin, send me an email. Just send it to info@pondboss.com. Include your phone number, and I'll call you. So, Billy Random, what's your opinion on using fight nets to sample fish in small lakes and ponds under 10 acres? I think it's great. I love it. Now, here's what everybody needs to know about sampling. Every sampling tool is biased. The least biased of all of them is the electrofishing boat. But it's biased because it only shocks 6 feet deep, 7 feet deep. Well, what a fight net is it's a hoop net with wings on it that you put next to the shore, and when fish are traveling along the shore, they're funneled into these funnels, into this net, and then you can capture them alive and you can sample them. Experimental gill nets are good sampling tools, but they kill the fish. So I think using fight nets is a great idea. They're going to be biased toward fish that migrate and small fish as well. You're probably not going to find a largemouth bass in a fight net, and if you did, that one was just not having a smart day. But you can catch crappie, you can catch bluegills, red ear sunfish, shiner minnows. Fish like that will sure go into a fight net. So I think fight net's a great tool. I use them from time to time myself. There's Jim Nordquist from Illinois. I bet you are ice fishing. Kenneth Primo from Louisiana. More Primos. Good to see you. Travis is hanging out in Mexico. Russell Braswell from Birmingham. War Eagle. Yeah. It's either War Eagle or, what's the other one? Look at there. There's Matt Marsden, American Fish Tree, checking in from Signal Mountain, Tennessee. Kim Moore. Hello, Kim Moore from Central Illinois. Leah Grun's just east of Beggs. Look at there. How do I know? Beggs might be pretty close to where you are. There's Sarah Parvin. She's checking in. That girl shoots some really cool TikTok videos and her Facebook things. She catches these giant bluegills, and I'm going to talk to Sarah one of these days. Every picture I see, she's got these mammoth bluegills, like huge, and I know that they've got a private lake in Alabama, and I know they got their fish from American Sport Fish Hatchery, and I know they feed the fish, but they're growing some really big, nice bluegills. Check out her page as well. Mark Dyer, if we assess our water quality due to the cyanobacteria last year, when after ice out do you start sampling? How often do you sample through the year to track that? Do you do both algae samples and water chemistry to track phosphorus levels as well as at same intervals? Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah, Travis Smith has been through Gerty, Oklahoma. Well, if you misspelled it, you probably even missed it because it's about that big. It's a neat little small town right there in central Oklahoma. Mark, assessing water quality gives you some trends, but it doesn't verify what's growing in it. So you need to do 2 kinds of sampling. If you check water quality, you're going to be looking at things such as the nitrogen to phosphorus ratios. And cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, grows typically because there's not a good balance between nitrogen and phosphorus to feed the healthy plankton. So I would be sending in samples to a lab to identify your cyanobacteria. And I'd probably do that monthly starting, I don't remember where you are. Well, if you got ice out, you're going to be in a northern tier state. I'd be looking at that probably 3 weeks after ice out. And I would check the water chemistry, and I would check, and I tell you what, my good friend Bill Cody from Malenta, Ohio is a microbiologist. I don't know anybody that knows any more about cyanobacteria colonies, identifying them. He may not know everything about how to treat it, but he can sure identify it. And if anybody needs to send samples, I will. If you'll email me at just info@palmboss.com and say, hey, I'd like to get Bill Cody's contact information, I'll send that to you. You know, for like 30 or 40 bucks, he will do an algae count and tell you what's good and what's bad. He may not tell you what you need to do about it, but he's going to tell you what's good and what's bad. So I'd be looking at tracking those. If you start seeing, and here's something real important. Check your visibility. Do that as soon as ice out starts. Write it down. Get you a Secchi disc. If you don't have one, go online, order one. SECCHI, or make one. You can make one out of the lid of a 5-gallon bucket tacked onto a broomstick or anchored onto a cord or something. And if you measure the visibility depth, how far down you can see in the water, that's your first clue that you've got some kind of an algae bloom going on. And the visibility, if you start off like at ice out and visibility is 5 feet, and then a month later it's 2 feet, you need to be checking that out. You know, but if you're watching your visibility and it's decreasing over a slower, longer period of time, then you're good. So check visibility, check temperature. And then when you start seeing signs of a plankton bloom, when the water starts to turn green and your visibility decreases, that's when you want to start digging into it and seeing what you got more about. Let me sure. And do you do both algae samples and water chemistry? When you've got a good plankton bloom and you do the water chemistry, then your phosphorus and nitrogen numbers are skewed because they're bound in that algae, because the algae is using it. So when you test that water and phosphorus is tied up in algae cells or algal cells, you're not going to get a good reading. But that's still a good reason to check it, because if you can see that phosphorus is fluctuating and compare that to your algae counts, then you can start to see a relationship. Now that's getting pretty deep into the science of that. And it's not easy to do it either, because depending on what kind of phosphorus you're checking, are you checking phosphates or phosphoric acid? I mean, what are you checking? So it's a little complicated, but okay. That's about all I got to say about that. Kirk McGlamory checking from Dripping Springs. Michael Eric, Iowa. Sarah, I tell you what, send an email to info@palmboss.com and send me your phone number, and I will ring you, or your email, however you want to communicate. I'll email back and forth or talk to you, whatever you'd like to do. I want to hear about what you're doing. It's pretty dang cool. John Elmer, Bob, I was trying to pre-buy your book. I was surprised it's not listed or offered at palmboss.com. Where can I get my order in? Call the office. Leanne probably hasn't gotten it on the website yet, but I've got a book coming out here before long. The layout guy wants me to send him a few more pictures, and so I've got to take the time to do that, and then we're going to be ready to go to press with it. We figured out how many pages it's going to be, which I don't remember, like 168 or something. And once we get that figured out and get some of those blank pages filled with photos, then we'll print it. But yes, call the office, 800-687-6075 or 903-564-6144, and Leanne will help you with that. Okay, Jeff Thompson. Hello, Jeff. Good to see you. Looking to add pea gravel for bluegill spawning beds. What's a good size for one bedding area? A good size, if you just look at the size of a pickup truck, that's perfect. Doesn't have to be quite as wide as a pickup truck, but say 10 feet by 15 feet, 18 feet, something like that. I would put down some geotextile cloth and put 4 inches of pea gravel. And I think you're asking what's the size of the bedding area, but the pea gravel needs to be, now listen to this, you don't want crushed rock, you don't want rotten granite, that's all got sharp edges. You want pea gravel, like blasting sand or washed river gravel that is 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 inch in diameter. If it's that size, the bluegills can move it around and make their beds and get good spawns from that. Bill Cody is very active on the forum, which at pondboss.com, we've got a forum called Ask the Boss, and Bill Cody's totally active on that. He's active. He's way more active on it than me. He loves that forum. He loves to help people, and he's a rock solid dude. I've known him since, I guess, 2002, something like that. Travis Paul Smith, the hood of a pickup. Yep, I would make it at least the size of the hood of a pickup. I sure would. Nick Allen, hope all is well. Got some ice fishing in 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks. Yeah, I got some ice fishing in 2 weeks ago here in Indiana. Hit the smaller pond. The large lake is about 5 acres. We catch monster bluegill year round, but can never find them when ice fishing. Any suggestions of where they be or gravitate to? Yeah, I think they're going to gravitate toward deeper water, probably around structure, and they're going to be typically maybe not a real tight school, but if you find one, you're going to find most of them because they're going to be somewhere where the temperature is moderate and they're safe. And I was watching a video today. I think it was a TikTok video of some guys ice fishing, and they had an underwater camera, and they had lowered the camera down, on a cord, and had it playing on a TV in their ice tent, ice house, and it showed this trout come up and start sniffing. You could see it. It was on TV. It was pretty dadgum cool. So you might drill a few holes and use a viewfinder, see if you can find those fish. Which is funny that a Texan's talking about ice fishing. There's Jerry Siebert from Oregon. Kirk, where is the native habitat of water dogs? Could they be stocked and sustained in a pond? Would they be able to multiply fast enough to survive predation from bass? Water dogs are to salamanders like tadpoles are to frogs. So they're the juvenile form of salamanders. So anywhere that salamanders can live, you're going to find water dogs. I remember draining a pond outside of Athens, Texas, about 10 years ago. I was stunned at the number of water dogs. But one thing that pond had was no fish. And the muck was thick. When we got all the last of the water out, you could just see them walking through on top of the mud. And if we tried to wade out there to get them, we'd be belly button deep in muck, and you can't get out of that. So we left that to the water dogs. But they like to feed on the bottom. They sift their food. And when they get a little older, they become a little bit more predatory. So they'll eat insects as well as they get bigger. But they like marshy, soft bottoms with food. And so that pretty well qualifies for everywhere. So you can see them. I've seen them in ponds. And you really got to look for them to find them. They don't just show up. And if you've got very many fish, they ain't going to make it. They're going to get eaten because they are very tasty. Now, once they're salamanders, they give off some kind of a pheromone or something where fish aren't likely to eat them. But most ponds and lakes in the South, Midwest, Northeast have got water dogs in them. Florida's a big spot for water dogs. Now, one thing that's different is the sizes of them. Sometimes the sizes aren't really, really big, but I've seen them 12, 14 inches long before. It's pretty fun. But I tell you this, the only time I ever see them is when we drain a pond or draw one down really fast. That's the only time I ever see them. There have been a couple of occasions, I take that back, where one of my grandkids and Debbie and I were seining the pond at the old LL Comma 2, and we seined some up in a pond. And they were pretty dadgum cool. You can't hardly hold them because they're so slick, so fast. And Justin says creeks. They also do live, yes, they do live in creeks. Kendall Brown, look out, Bob, I'm late. Well, hey, we're catching up for you, brother. Robert Dyer, for the bluegill spawning beds, do you put some kind of border around the edges or the peak to keep the peak gravel from spreading out? Yeah, let me tell you what we do there. When we're building spawning beds, I make them flat. I make them perfectly flat. And if we need an edge around them, then we'll put a little bit of an edge around them. We might use organic matter like a 4-inch log and hammer it down, anchor it really good with small anchors. But what we typically do is make sure they're flat, and we don't cover the whole flat area with gravel. So we make the gravel bed, from the size of the hood of a pickup up to the size of a pickup, maybe even a little bit bigger. But we don't, and we build them on ledges. So I like to take coming down off of a slope of a pond, cut it at 3 feet deep typically. And we do them, depending on the slope, anywhere from 18 inches to 4 feet deep. And we do that to accommodate water level fluctuations. And we'll put the gravel in there at about 4 inches thick on top of that geotextile cloth. And as long as that area is fairly flat, that gravel isn't going to migrate laterally. Travis Smith says 4 or 5 beds per acre. I think that's ideal. And the reason, you don't have to have 4 or 5 beds if you know where the fish are going to spawn. That's the trick. You know, I've been doing this a long time and I still don't get it right. But they get enough options that when that bluegill population density gets to a certain point, the best bluegills are going to dominate the best beds. But then other smaller bluegills that can't run the big ones off, they'll migrate over and start using some of the other beds that are less occupied. So that's what I got about that. Let's see what else we got here. All right, Jerry Siever said the water dogs in Oregon, the fish won't eat them. That's probably political. I didn't say that. I bet bass would eat them. Okay, let's see here. Mark Dyer, the sample I took last year went to Bill Cody. To get this straight, am I understanding this relationship correctly? Phytoplankton consists of single-cell algae and cyanobacteria. When the cyanobacteria dominates the water body, it outcompetes the good algae, which affects the zooplanktons that cannot eat cyanobacteria, only the good algae. That's correct. This would then affect zooplankton numbers, which negatively impacts forage fish health and survival. That's correct. Needing to explain the negative fish impact of cyanobacteria to the HOA, not just the health impact to people and dogs. That's absolutely correct. When the cyanobacteria gets dense enough, it outcompetes all the good algae. And when that happens, it completely disrupts the food chain. I have seen it. I've read papers and seen evidence. Talked to Mark Cornwell about that. He's got some lakes in upstate New York, public lakes, where the, I can't remember the name of the little fish, look like shad. That's their food. They got to eat zooplankton. They got to eat planktonic algae or algae. And where the cyanobacteria is dominating it, those fish numbers plummet because their food chain's gone. And when that happens, it cascades all the way down the food chain. So that affects the predator fish as well. So, and not only that, when you have a big die-off of cyanobacteria and those cells begin to break loose and release their toxins, that's when you can have a fish kill as well. So it absolutely does have an impact on the ecology and the health of a pond. Now, it may not cause anything obvious, depending on the density of the cyanobacteria, how much blue-green algae you got is going to up the top of the food chain. So you can take this video and let them watch that, or you can write it down and I'll sign off on it. Whoops, looks like it disappeared for a second. Let's see here. Kenny Sanderson's having a conversation with Jimmy Mitchell. Dang, I almost missed you, Bob. Greetings, Mountain Home, Texas. I love Mountain Home, Texas. That's pretty. Alewives, that's it. Kenny, you got it. That's it. Alewives. That's the fish in the northeastern part of the country that are completely disrupted by cyanobacteria, and it's hurt them. It's hurt them a lot. Harrison Davis, good to see you checking in from Georgia. Hey, let's do commercials. Hey, Palm Boss Magazine, look at here. If you haven't subscribed to Palm Boss Magazine yet, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year, and that date's gone. And all you got is a memory. Here you got a resource. That was pretty sleek, wasn't it, Mom?
I'm reading.
Oh, she's not listening. Oops. But anyway, this is an older one. I haven't been to the office yet to see the new one, the January-February issue. And anyway, Palm Boss, $35 a year. I also want to say thank you to Purina Mills for helping sponsor this show. I love Purina Mills because I love how they approach their research and to create the best products they can create. I'll be the first one to tell you that sometimes their distribution is a headache. However, every dealer that's a Purina dealer can get pretty much any product that you might want. I tell you this, I got to help them develop some products, And my job was to feed it to the fish and see how the fish reacted. And talking about Sarah Parvin's big bluegill, the biggest bluegill that, well, here, I'm going to go this way. Up until probably 2006, 2007, I would tell an audience, I'd say, I've probably held 15 bluegills that were 2 pounds. I've probably held, 50 or 60 that are 1.75 pounds. But I have held thousands that are 1 pound to 1.25 pounds. And you can grow those. Well, since about 2005 or 6, when I got to work with Purina to develop the Aquamax line of feeds and some specialty feeds targeted toward bluegills, as well as targeted toward other carnivorous fish that are feed trained, I bet you I've held 10,000 2-pound plus bluegills now. And I've seen pictures of that many more. The biggest bluegill that I've helped raise was 3 pounds and 4 ounces. And that's pretty significant. And the only difference between that speech and the speech a while ago was fish food. And it was Purina's Aquamax lineup of fish foods. I've watched it grow big fish. We did it in our place. I've seen it in lake after lake after lake. I know 7 or 8 lakes and ponds in Texas that could break the fly fishing state record, and the landowners they don't want to do it. They just want to enjoy those 2.5, 2.25 pound bluegills. So I love Purina for that because they produce some great fish food. Texas Hunter products, I love those guys as well. Great feeders. They're pricey, but you get what you pay for. If you want to go to a box store and buy a $250 feeder, go do it. It's going to break at some point, which every machine has issues at some point. The thing I love about Texas Hunter, not only are the products good, customer service is tops. I can send an email to Chris Blood or Cody or one of the guys there, Dale Baden, somebody there at Texas Hunter, and you can too. That's not just responding to me. They respond to everybody. And that day, they got it figured out. If something happens with your feeder and you don't know what it is, maybe you got some rain up under the lid, somebody came along, didn't fasten the lid, and the lid blew off. They'll tell you what to do to clean it out, how to get it fixed, get it rolling again. If you have any issues, they're really, really good about that. So I appreciate them. Same with David Schneiderman, Easy Docks of Texas. Check him out. He's on here watching this now. You can do it. Ron Ardwan. That's pretty funny, buddy. Okay, let me go back here. Let's see, I'm missing some stuff here. Yes, let's see. Jimmy Mitchell. What do you think about biochar in and up the watershed in a livestock pond that is nutrient abundant most of the time? Well, I don't get stumped very often. I don't know what biochar is. What do I think about biochar in and up the watershed in a livestock pond that is nutrient abundant most of the time? I'm going to take a shot at this. I think biochar may be a type of charcoal, a carbon-based product whose job it is to sequester some nutrients. If I'm guessing right, because I don't know what that product is, but if biochar, if it's a charcoal type product, it's not going to solve excess phosphorus or excess nitrogen, but it can sequester metals like iron and things like that. So Jimmy says, yes, sir. Okay, so if that's what it is, I would stay within the label of it. I would rather see you use something like, there's a product that sequesters phosphorus. Job one is to answer the question, what's the problem? If it's nutrient abundant, how abundant? And once you know how abundant, then I could have a conversation with somebody that could help me figure out how to fix that. Like Matt Rail in Indiana. He's really dug into that a lot. So there are products that you can use, but I don't know about biochar. Okay, Mark Dyer. So when we had algae sample of 97% cyanobacteria, that could explain part of the reason that our shocking results had zero to 3 bluegill and no gizzard shad under 11 inches. That could sure play a role. It absolutely could play a role. Now, I can't sit here and tell you that that played a role, but I can tell you it sure could play a role, because when gizzard shad are small, they are filter feeders. But when gizzard shad are bigger, like an 11-inch one, they're not filter feeders. They're feeding in the bottom. You know why they call them a gizzard shad? Oh, I can hear Ron right now. Because they have a gizzard. Yeah, they have a gizzard. So what, and their mouth is underneath their face. Anytime a fish has a mouth under its face, it's a bottom feeder. Has a mouth right here, it's typically a predator of some sort. If its mouth opens upward, it's a filter feeder, filtering its food out. So when out of the water. So when a small shad is born or hatched, from 0 to about 3 inches, it's filter feeding out of the water column. Okay, Kirk, Sherlunker bluegills. Yeah, I love that. Ron, I've never held a 2-pound bluegill, but I've done 2 Palm Boss live shows. Where have you around Lake? Well, we're having a little internet issue, looks like, which I don't have any idea what that is. Travis says, I hope that those, almost call them Cajuns, took good care of you around Lake Charles. Buddy, we had the best etouffee. We had crawfish cornbread. Aguilar brought the boudin, a couple different kinds. We were in, and we had a fire. We got to shoot the breeze around the campfire. Got to do this show from the cabane right there, right on the shores of Lake Ardoin, or Pond Ardoin. Okay. I wish I would have been in Louisiana, dropped back by when I have a friend in Dodge City. I want to meet the man, the legend, Pond Boss. Yeah, listen to that. Self-anointed, right? Okay, let's see here. What's up, Drew? Hey, let's build a lake in southwest Louisiana. You guys talk amongst yourself. I love it. Chris Blood. Good to see Chris. I was hoping you'd be checking in, my brother. Thanks for your support. We appreciate you and the wealth of information you provide through Palm Boss Live and hashtag Palm Boss Magazine. Thanks, buddy, and I appreciate Texas Hunter. I do. Justin Ludwig, you would be better off tying up phosphorus with alum. Foslock, that's what it was. Drew, hey, that's what I'm looking for. Foslock. I couldn't think of that product a while ago. That's good. Yeah, you guys are having a good time there. Drew Hay came to the Institute of Higher Pondology too, and those guys are all asking me to do another one. So once we get our home settled in and figured out, I'm going to start looking. I think right here where we are in Pecan Plantation, they got a hotel with 18 rooms, a boardroom, the river. We've got ponds and lakes all over this property. I just haven't met the right people yet so I can put that together, but I'm getting ready to do that. Brandon Lee Prophet. Here's a question I've never had. I love that. Does fishing pressure affect the growth of bass? It does not. Fishing pressure affects the bass behavior. It's kind of like Pavlov's dogs. If you tell your dog to sit, it sits and gets a treat. It's going to continue that behavior. I just called a girlfriend over here. Come here, girlfriend. Come here. Get up here. Come on. Oh, okay. Never mind. All right. So, no, it does not affect their growth rates. But what it does do is and see, here's one way to kind of bolster that thought. Their memory is only 15 minutes. But repeated conditioning, like too much fishing pressure, will make them turn up their nose at that bait. But that's not to keep them from eating. They're going to keep eating. They're going to do what they're rewarded with. So if there's gizzard shad, if there's threadfin shad, if there's the backbone of the food chain, bluegill are there, shiners, whatever, and they can eat one of those and get satiated with it, they're going to continue that behavior. And I mean, there's a lot of other things that affect the way fish behave. It's what kind of habitat, what kind of food chain. Do they have places they can reproduce or not? Do they have places they can congregate? Do they have places that they can have an open dinner table? Is the cafeteria open 24 hours a day or not? Do they go 10 days without food? That's what affects their growth rates, not fishing pressure, really. Mark Dyer, the man shocking or late, hit the prime spots likely to hold fish. When you shock sample a pond under 30 acres or so, do you only hit the best looking spots you think will hold fish, or do you cover as much shoreline as possible, productive or not? And would that change assessment over a set time of shock sampling? Generally, how many hours do you shock to get a sample you believe is representative per acre? Okay, I love that. I love that. So, let me make sure I'm not missing something. Mark, man, you got some pretty high-powered questions coming. I'll tell you exactly how that works. You want to electrofish until you figure out the patterns. So now my typical style is I like to electrofish the entire perimeter of a lake. Now it's not unusual once I've captured 75 bass in a 25-acre lake that I already see what's going on compared to the food chain. But I want that customer to get their money's worth and I want them to have confidence in our sampling as well. But it's not unusual to be out there for 45 minutes in a 20-acre lake and you can see it. And the more fish you capture, all that does is just add to your confidence level that you're going to make a good assessment. Now, I tell you what I will do is depending on the size of the lake, the way it's configured and its depths, I'll shock the perimeter, but I'll also zigzag across the middle just to see if we can pick up some shad. Now, if I worked on about a 25-acre lake back in the early fall in East Texas, and everywhere we went, we were picking up threadfin shad and gizzard shad. And I found some spots in the middle of the lake where we were picking up bass. We'll come to find out when I was talking to the landowner, he had found some brush piles that the guy that built the lake had left out in the middle of the lake, and they were within about 5 feet of the surface. So I do go to the best looking spots, but the best looking spots to me may not be the best looking spots to the fish. So I do consider electrofishing to be a biased but less random sampling tool than angling, gill nets, fight nets, or seine samples. So if I'm really going to dig into a lake and try to figure it out like a 300-acre lake for a homeowners association, I'm going to enlist some help, and we're going to do all those sampling tools. But to answer your question, how many hours do you shock to get a sample you believe is representative per acre? Well, for example, with Ron, we did an 88-acre lake, and the guys were on the pedal for 176. I think it was 176 minutes. There's a timer on it. I watch the timer. That's important to me because I want to know. Not only do I want to know what's there, I want to know the catch per unit of effort. That's called CPUE. So, like that lake, we sampled, and I need to talk about this. I told you I was going to talk about fish. I ain't done that yet. But the catch per unit of effort was a little over 20 bass per hour. So I want to know that number because anything 25 and under is considered trophy bass or understocked. 25 to say 50 bass per hour is closer to balance depending on the relative weights of those fish and the size distribution. Okay, we want to see multiple sizes of fish that are chunky. That's what we're looking for. And if we don't see that, we got to deduce why not. And then say more than 75 in an hour, that's starting to get crowded. And I've shocked lakes where we've picked up over 200 bass in an hour. And they were all cookie cutter carbon copies, 10 to 12 inch fish with 85% relative weights that needed to come out. So that's a pretty in-depth answer about that. But I do want to talk about the lake that Ron worked on that I was able to attend with him. Yeah, you guys, the Dyer boys, you need to come to that Institute of Fire Apologetics. The questions you're asking, man, they fit right in. How's the grandbaby's baby Lusk? Should be getting big now. Yeah, well, let me tell you, that little bitty guy. Woo! Now I know why young people give birth. Debbie and I babysat. She stayed with me a couple of days. She had to come back and meet the painters, but I had them by myself for about 3 days, and pretty fun. It's pretty darn fun. All right, we need to see if Sarah Parvin can give our young daughters a guided fishing trip. Well, I don't know what Sarah does. I know that she's got some great fish. Steve Thorburn, I hope everyone is good. Tons of big bullfrog tadpoles showing up in riprap as ice leaves. That's common. How many days in a row would you set fight nets on the same pond when collecting data for population estimates and relative weight calculations? Billy, I would use that fight net probably 5 days in a row, and I would do it. I would do that like in May or June. That's when I would do that. And I would do it. I would also, if you're going to set fight nets, you might as well buy a 50-foot seine and do some shoreline seine sampling sets while you're at it, because if you do that, then you see how well your fish reproduced, especially if you can identify fish that are about that long, little bitty guys. Okay, so Danny Mac liked that electrofishing explanation. Hey, Pond Boss, $35 a year, cheaper than a Friday night date, lasts all year long. It does. There's nuggets. I guarantee you there's nuggets in there. So here's what I wanted to talk about with the lake, this 88-acre lake that we evaluated. I guess it's been 2 weeks ago tomorrow. And I just finished the report, a tedious report, like 5,000 word report with a bunch of pictures and graphs and things. But that lake, when we were shocking, they shocked up probably something just slightly less than 200 common carp in the 3 to 5 pound range, several thousand gizzard shad that were ranging in size anywhere from 9 inches to probably 16 inches, and a handful of small ones. Bluegills that ranged in size from about 2 inches to 5 inches, nothing bigger, nothing smaller. And this is South Louisiana too. Shocked up 50 largemouth bass in 176 minutes. I think that's the number. And those bass relative weights ranged from 90, 95 up to about 125. Maybe there was one bass that was probably 130. So the dilemma was, and crappie. Oh my gosh, they shocked up hundreds of crappie. And I'm going to tell you this, out of 25 crappie randomly collected with the electrofishing boat, 5 of them were big enough to catch. The rest of them were small and stunted, and there was at least 6 size classes. So they had the adults that were 10 to 12 inches long. Out of the whole set of crappie that they captured, there was one 13 inches long. There were about 5 or 6, and there was probably they weighed and measured, or at least measured. I'm going to tell you, I think it was somewhere in excess of 100 crappie. One 13-incher. There were 5 that were 10 to 12 inches long, and all the rest were smaller than that, all the way down to about 3 inches long. So those things were overcrowded. Bass were underpopulated. Bluegill numbers were low. So and the water was turbid. Now he's doing some work with a track hoe, going around the edges, digging up cattails and taking them out with a track hoe and a weed cutter boat. Picking up cattails out in the middle of the lake with a weed cutter boat, and alligator weed and some other plants that he's trying to get rid of. And that is an old catfish farm where they had something like 20 ponds that range in size from 10 to 12 acres. And he took the front part of that catfish farm, somebody did before this guy bought it, and converted it to an 88-acre lake. And it's all shallow. There's no water in it deeper than 5 feet that the guys found. So now our dilemma is, what are we going to do about it? They fill it with a well, so he's got a good stream of water. I'm not comfortable telling him to start over, because the fish he's got are spectacular fish. So what do you do with a lake like that, where you've got way too many carp, shadder numbers are too high, crappie numbers are too high? Well, the recommendations that we made for them, Ron and I did, this is Ron's client and friend, is to you bring in an electrofishing boat for harvest and go at night, set some feeders up first, start feeding the fish, the cheapest fish food you can get. That's going to attract carp to those feeders. Then they can use the electrofishing boat and time the feeders, which I didn't talk to Ron about that, but set the feeders to go off about 10 minutes apart in a line. And once the carp are coming to each one of those feeders, then you can hit one with the electrofishing boat, then hit the next one, then hit the next one, then hit the next one, then hit the next one. However many feeders he's going to end up buying from Texas Hunter, by the way. And and that way you start harvesting some with the electrofishing boat. And this guy's willing to do that. And the same thing can be done with a gizzard shad. They don't have to take as many gizzard shad, because if you take enough gizzard shad, they're going to respond by reproducing. But they can also be part of the reason the water's turbid, them and the carp, part of the reason. But here's the problem there. If you decrease the turbidity too much in a lake that's less than 5 feet deep in South Louisiana, guess what's going to happen? it's going to load up with plants. And then you're going to trade problems. So trying to harvest fish electrofishing, improve habitat, use the track code to go around the perimeter and dig some deeper channels all the way around the perimeter, build some peninsulas. If they can build some peninsulas, then they can increase shoreline. The more shoreline they can increase, then they can raise more fish and then enhance those channels and cuts around those peninsulas with fish structure. Talking about artificial fish structure, talking about creating fish cities underwater, that they can fish. So it's going to be a combination of different tactics to take that lake from an okay bass fishing lake with low catch rates to improved catch rates. One of the biggest problems they're going to have is here is an absolute truth. Listen to this. Here we are almost at the end of the show, and I'm getting to an absolute truth. Mother Nature abhors a vacuum or a void and abhors a bounty. So when Ron Ardoin's in there, Ardoin, I said it again, Ron, dude, it's just something about it. Boudin, Ardoin. When Ron is helping this guy manage this lake and starts to create a bounty of fish, more than that water could produce naturally, it's going to attract predators. Now in South Louisiana and in this lake, they have these things they call alligators. I don't know that they have a lot of river otters or nutria rats, or nutria don't eat fish anyway, but mink live in that part of the country, but alligators also eat those. So the landowner wants to reduce the alligator count, which he's doing, but when that happens, you got to be on the lookout to see if something takes its place, which is going to be river otters or mink or something like that. And then you got migratory birds that have a tendency to want to stay there because they got a food source. And that is double-crested cormorants or pelicans. So it's going to be a multifaceted management strategy to reduce carp, reduce gizzard shad, reduce crappie, increase bass numbers by stocking and feeding the bluegills, stock more bluegills because they're way short on bluegills, get their numbers up, protecting the habitat, creating new habitat, and then defending it from the comers. That's going to be the strategy for that lake. And it ain't going to be easy, but I think they can do it. Okay, Billy Granholm, you're welcome. Kenny Sanderson, Old Roy is great for training carp. That's a good idea. I like that. Old Roy dog food. Let's see here. Travis says, I love shows like this. Thank you. Tell your queen, Miss Debbie, I said hi. Travis said hi.
Hi back.
She's waving at you saying hi back. So that was the part about the fish that I wanted to talk to you about tonight. So I think I'm going to start wrapping it up right there. Looks like the questions are pretty well gone. Let me go back and scroll through and make sure. Then we'll do a little sign off. Yep, I think I've got it here. If I miss a question, I'll go back and check it. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up with that, guys. And, I'm totally flattered that you guys will sit here and ask these questions and listen to me talk about what I've loved for my entire life. Right over there is the Brazos River. In August of 1969, my parents bought a place 5 miles from here. In my formative teenage years, when I was 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, I got to play up and down that river, and I was fascinated by what I saw. I was able to study fish. I didn't understand why when the moon was full that you'd see catfish hiding under rocks. I didn't get that. When the moon was gone, they were flying everywhere. It was very, very cool. That's where I found my passion. And now we've circled back so that our grandkids and friends can come enjoy this river as well. Want those grandkids to skip rocks, trap minnows, kayak when they get big enough, and just hang out with us. So we're totally blessed by that, and I hope that you guys are blessed and that you get to follow what your dreams are and what your passions are. I've gotten to do that, and I wouldn't trade places with too many people. I'm still leading a pretty cool life. So I do appreciate you guys checking in and hanging out with me tonight. And I'm not sure where I'll be next Wednesday, but I got a pretty good feeling I'll be hanging out with you guys. So until then, adios.